Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Now it's time to start with public finance after we discussed everything in the field of financial markets and asset financing. So let's go back to a macro perspective. And in this chapter, we will talking about public budget, public debt, public default. So actually how the state can operate from financial point of view. So first of all, when we have to talk about public finance, usually state functions are highly important. So we have to define that what is actually the objective to use the state as a superior operator of the nation. So what kind of services should they provide? And actually there is a huge or long list and different approaches where we can say that what can be a state function. So if you are looking on this graph or table made by Fukuyama, actually we can say that okay, there can be minimalist, there can be interim, or there can be activist, or even totalitarian functions here. So it depends on time, on country, on economic model, that which parts of this mix will be used. So today, if we are looking on European Union countries, we can say that okay, education, obviously we have to provide this, but still if you are looking on the quality of education, so there are member states in the European Union where 1/3 of the young population is not able to finish high school. So Spain. And also Italy has terrible data. In other member states it's just 10. In 2020 I think it's still terrible. But yeah, so if you are looking on the rest of the data, then still we can see that on average these functions are the most important as average of the GDP for European countries in the European Union. So public services, it means that actually operating the state, defense is not that important. Public order and safety, so having police, is also, it has its weight, but it's not leading importance. Economic affairs, so state-owned enterprises and to operate them and to cover maybe their losses. Environmental protection, housing. Then what is the most important here is human capital investments. So this is 2/3 of the general budget. So we can say that health, education, and social protection will be there. And also culture a bit. But we can see that, yeah, it's mostly about the building, the forming of the human capital, and also the maintenance and the long-term perspective for human capital. And also maybe we can say that, okay, but also at the same time the defense of this human capital and also the infrastructure, physical infrastructure can be crucial. So we can put this on the human capital completely. so so they are selecting from this mix, but actually we can say that there is this school which called varieties of capitalism inside economics, and mostly what they are doing that they are trying to categorizing countries in the different according to their functions. So we can say that, okay, in the case of a liberal market economy, we can say that competitive market arrangements can be focused. While in a coordinated market economy like in Germany, Japan, Sweden and Austria, non-market relations can be also significant. And for equilibrium, they have demand, supply and hierarchy. Uh, in the case of coordinated market economy, strategic interaction among firms and other actors can be also very important. Interfirm relations can be competitive or collaborative. Mode of production, direct product competition. On the other hand, coordinated market economies are focusing on niches. It can be differentiated. So, yeah. And institutions function. Competitiveness, freer movement of inputs. On the other hand, monitoring can be really important to avoid monopolies. Wage bargain is happening on firm level. Coordinated market economy is happening on industrial level, so trade unions are stronger usually, and they are representing the labor force. Training and education, formal education from high schools and colleges. At the same time, in the coordinated market economy, apprenticeship and industry-specific skills are also really important. So that's why it can be strange, but we can see that in many European member states, like in Germany, the ratio of young people with at least a bachelor degree is sometimes lower than elsewhere in the continent, because you can live from working in the industry. Unionization rate is low in liberal market economies. Also, income distribution is non-equal, while the Gini ratios are lower in coordinated market economies. So actually we can see that this is just within the European Union and the neighborhood and Japan and the US, and and that's why it's really necessary to think about this, because if we have even broader perspective, then it can make negotiations when thinking about the function of the state even stranger, because actually these different economic models can make different, or can be combined with completely different motivations from the side of politics, from the side of companies, from the side of people who are coming from these regions. So I think that this is the most important issue here. How government budget is structured? Obviously, it has an input or income side and an expenditure side. Expenditures are mostly defined by state functions, so as we were able to say that, what is the focus of the budget. However, on the revenue side, we can see that taxes will be most important. So consumption taxes, they are beneficial because consumption taxes are paid by everybody in the society. So if people want to purchase a bread, then they have to pay consumption tax. It doesn't matter that you are unemployed, employed, retired, and so on. You will be purchasing the bread because you want to eat. So in this case, the value-added tax is the most broadest, has the most broadest tax base. So the tax base is really important concept, because if the tax base is broad enough, then it's really hard to bypass it. Obviously, some people or some companies are trying to do that, but practically the broadest is the better for the state, because it's not focusing on one niche market. Payroll tax, employees. So if you have wages, salaries, then actually the level of wage can be taxed. But it can have also different approaches. So flat payroll tax means that actually it doesn't matter the level of your wage, you will be always taxed with a defined percentage, let's say 10%, 19%, and then you can go on. Progressive taxation means that if you are earning higher and higher wages, then you have to provide higher and higher taxes for society because you are wealthy enough to support the operation of the state. And it's applied, for example, in Germany, and mostly it's the basis of welfare states, because in this case you can collect more money to focus on human capital development and maintenance. Unfortunately, this progressive taxation can have its own limits. So if you are imposing huge tax levels for high wages, it will happen that these rich people just will move to low tax countries. So that's the reason of popularity of Monte Carlo, or they are moving to Switzerland, or they are just start to give their money away to some foundations, and these foundations will move the money to tax havens. So mostly the tax havens, application of tax havens is partly motivated by progressive taxation. So flat taxation is much more honest, because you are there, you are paying. Usually the tax ratio is lower than under a progressive scheme. So usually these countries which are not focusing on payroll taxes so much, usually they are focusing on value-added taxes. For example, like in Hungary, that we have really high 27% of VAT, but we have lower flat payroll taxes. Income tax is for companies. So what you were able to earn as a profit, then you have to pay a percent of this as an income tax. And after that, what remains, then it can be distributed among the owners of the company in form of dividends, or it can be reinvested to the company. And in this case, companies have also managed this kind of income tax, because if you have higher and higher expenditures, then actually it means that the tax to be paid can be lower. So sometimes it can happen that artificial expenditures can appear in the profit and loss statement of the company. But yeah, so tax authority, if they are finding it, then there will be huge fines for that. So it's always a gray zone of accounting when companies are trying to make this, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Also, it can happen that companies are trying to do this because they are part of a multinational company, and they have to pay for the using the trademark or some other intellectual property rights of the parent company, and it generates the artificial expenditure. So in many cases, if you are looking on Google, Uber, or Amazon or other companies, usually their European subsidiaries have to pay a significant amount of their expenditures as intellectual property rights expenditure. So usually they are paying for Cayman Islands or other safe haven registered subsidiary for using this intellectual property right, and it can generate huge bias, because usually small and medium enterprises have to pay income tax, so they don't have offshore subsidiaries to bypass all the taxation, because in this case you need lawyers to find all these loopholes in the current tax legislation system and to maintain this, to make it legal. So it's legal, just unethical to avoid taxation, because the rest of the economy still have to pay for it, and still you are using their manpower and the infrastructure and so on. Okay, you are contributing to the export of the economy and the economic activity, and you are providing technology. Just on the other hand, it's disgusting. And also, there can be tax incentives from the side of the government. So they can provide you tax incentives for significant um, developing projects. So if you are doing some investments, it can be part of the project. But also in the European Union, so it have to be really sophisticated how you can provide this as a state, because it can easily fit or meet the problem of unjust benefits for one separated company, and yeah. So income taxes are can be absolutely different. Uh, Actually, KPMG has a nice database, so if you are interested uh, in the topic of different uh, tax ratios, then I can show it to you because it's a nice data set. So if you are looking on corporate tax rates table, so you can Google in KPMG and tax rates, and after that it provides us tax ratios for different countries, and we can see that it's on continental average, then for individual countries for different years, and even you can look for higher data sets. So for example, in, let's say, Germany, so corporate tax rates are quite high, so they are 30%. For example, in Czech Republic, it's 19%. Let's say Ireland, which is highly popular for some multinational companies in the service sector, you can see that it's way lower. And for tax havens, we can see that Isle of Man is 0. Okay, but this database can provide us also data about individual income tax ratios. So it's funny to see that the highest tax ratios are in EU, and then the Americas. So if you are looking on Germany again, then we can see that it's really high. At the same time, in Czech Republic, it's 22. For example, in Hungary, it's even lower. It's 15%. Actually, there was this 32, but that was the highest. So at that time we had a progressive taxing system, but it was really easy to fit into it. So if you were earning an average wage, which was not so high in Hungary, then so the upper top part of this wage was taxed already with this 32%. So everybody hated this because it was highly unjust. It was not taxing wealthy people, it was taxing everybody with a higher tax ratio. And let's see Ireland, because I mentioned them already. Yeah. Wow. Okay, this should be also the top level of the progressive taxation, so it's not generally for all the wages. Okay, and for mainly for consumption taxes, yeah, we can see that syrup is still more expensive. It's yeah, in Czechia it's ridiculously cheap to buy anything because of the VAT level is remarkably low, and they are maintaining a really stable budget and low public debt at the same time. So it's we can say that it's sustainable. In Germany, oh my god. Okay, and let's see, Hungary. Oh, so for some reason the scale has been changed, but individual income tax. It went back to income tax. It's not. Indirect tax rates. Okay, there is a bug on the website because it's not updating in the desired direction. Okay, but as an illustration, it was nice. So, uh, obviously there can be other taxes like capital gains tax, wealth tax, gift tax, but usually they are highly marginal. So, so let's see that how budget deficit and public debt are created. So usually we have incomes, so revenues. So let's say wage, or payroll tax. Also we have corporate income tax. Let's provide a nice green color for that. And also we have consumption related taxes, so this will be VAT. It will be a friendly blue color. And also, on the other hand, we have expenditures. So in this case, we can say that it can be structured like the annual flow expenditures. So it will be gray. So thinking back about this, so let's say that okay, there is a yearly fee to operate all the public administration. Yeah, you have to pay over the wages of policemen, teachers, healthcare personnel. There is a annual losses of the state-owned railway company. So this is the flow expenditures. But what matters here that from year to year you have to make investments. And obviously this flow expenditures can be even more significant. So it's not just things. So actually this would be investment. But this investment can be directed to the physical infrastructure, like roads, highways. Or if you want to build a hospital, it will be physical infrastructure because you are building a building, you are purchasing equipment into it, and so on. Also, you can say that, yeah, but it's mostly motivated by that maybe I don't want to let my citizens to die because in this case it decreases my tax incomes in the future and the possibility of economic growth at the same time, which also decreases my possible tax incomes in the future. So in this perspective, we can say that it's also human capital. Also, we can say that, okay, let's build a highway, but we are building this highway to connect some rural areas uh, to the central uh, economic areas. So it means that actually we can generate some growth. Maybe in consumption, maybe some companies will go there because of this nicer infrastructure and they will do some investment. And we know that today's investment is the future economic growth and economic output. So usually if we start an investment today, start to build for a factory, then within 2 years our GDP will grow and our tax incomes can also grow. Not just because the company will operate there, so they are providing us some taxes as part of the corporate income tax, but also because people will have wages who are working there, and these people will consume more. And of course, they can give us or give job to more people in the service sector because they can go to restaurants, they can go for kung fu or something. So they will generate additional jobs in the service sector. So it can have a widespread effect. But obviously, these widespread effects or these multiplicators will have long-term impacts. So you can see the fruits of this infrastructure development instantaneously in the same fiscal year when, okay, now we build the highway within a year, which is a highly optimistic agenda because usually we are building highways for 3 years. Once you started the paperwork until it's finished, now it's 5 years. So you know that 3 years administration and 2 years construction is much more a realistic approach, but it doesn't matter. So let's assume that we are building the highway within a year with all the paperwork and construction and the quality is still acceptable. Still, we can't say that it will generate instantaneously this rise in the tax ratio. So it will have a long-term effect. So maybe within a decade or 2 decades, we can see that now the economic activity is increasing because of the nicer infrastructure in this region. So what I'm mentioning here that we can't say it would be highly irrational to say that, okay, I'm doing an investment here and I have to finance it from the annual income. On one hand, my capability to build roads would be highly limited because maybe I have enough money to build 10 kilometers of highway. Come on, now I have to build in each year 10 kilometers. Or if I have only money for 3 kilometers, the construction industry will cry because come on, we are doing nothing at all. It's not worth to go out with all the machines and start to dig for 3 kilometers. It's nothing. You are not even go out for running for 3 kilometers, so it would be useless. So investments need money. And in this case, we can say that they are long-term investments. So it is the same thing that if you are a company, you don't want to purchase a building or a machine from your annual profit. You are going to a bank because you need long-term assets, so you need long-term liabilities on the other hand. So that's why this investment can generate deficit. So this will be the budget deficit. Okay, on the other hand, we can say that, okay, maybe if you are underestimating your expenditures from the flow side, then it can happen that you are not able to cover your flow expenditures from revenues, but this can be poor planning or really deep economic recession. Because we know that there is no healthy state without healthy economy. So, output. Uh, let's color this. So we need economic output to have any of this. If you don't have economic output, then your state will be really fragile because you don't have enough incomes. You are not able to maintain institutions to stabilize this system. So they are coexisting. And also we know that if we have budget deficits in this year, then it should be financed somehow. And since the beginning of time, if countries needed money to fund their annual budget deficit, so this year 0, then obviously they had budget deficit uh, in the past as well. So for year 1, this budget deficit was maybe similar. Then 2 years ago, this budget deficit was even higher. So let's say it's something like this. 3 years ago, the budget deficit was similar than this year, and 4 years ago it was bigger again, and so on and so on. So it will be accumulated in time. So what we can do here, we will issue government bonds. So that's why we have a treasury. Each country should have this, so it's part of the institutional background. However, you have to maintain you don't have to fit to this structure. You don't have to say that, okay, I will issue 4-year or 1-year government bonds. You have to maintain a sustainable maturity structure for the entire public debt. So you're issuing government bonds with maturities. Usually, issuing long-term government bonds can be more stable for you because when it expires, you have to renew it, and if it expires only 10 years later, then it's easier for you. So let's say maturity 10 years. Let's have it with a green color because it's money. Also, you can have medium run government bonds with maturity of 5 years. Also, we can say that we can have maturity of 3 years. Okay, maybe this will be narrower, so we will just say that it's for 3 years. maybe we have maturity for 2-year maturity. Yeah. And 4-year. And the rest will be shorter. So this will be maturity of 1 year. They are always referred not like a government bond, but it's a bill. This is also referred as short-term debt. And here we can say that, okay, this is the maturity structure of the public debt. And what is really important here, that we should never forget about a really significant component, and this is actually part of the flow expenditures. Just let it define individually with a different color, and this will be interest payments of the debt. So as a company or a state, if you had debt, then you have to be able to cover your interest payments from your revenues. So your revenues should be able to cover it. If you are not able to cover it and you have to issue government bonds or corporate bonds, it doesn't matter, or take up a loan to cover also interest payments for your existing debt, then you are falling into a debt spiral and you will go to default sooner or later. So this is a really important thing. Also, we can say that the level of yields, government bond yields, can be a really good indicator that how sustainable is this public debt. Because usually countries are using different indicators like debt to GDP ratio, but I don't like it. So you can go to default with 40% debt to GDP ratio if nobody would like to purchase your government bonds, or you can really happily exist with 200% of GDP ratios. So it's not that significant. What matters, they are the long-term yields. So if you are going to stoku.com, then we can see that, okay, in Japan, the public debt to GDP ratio is 200%, or at least last time I checked. Oh, now it's bigger. Okay, so 214. And at the same time, we can see that, yep, yields are nearly zero. So people are buying this. German public debt to GDP ratio, we can see that it's really moderate, it's under 60%. What is happening with their longer run yields? They are even negative. Okay, but before, so we can see that before all the recessions and so on, it was still low. It can be considered as low. So here we can see that bonds can be significant, but also demand for bonds is even more significant. So in many cases, we have to say that we can refer back or remember on the previous chapter when we were able to say that, okay, there are domestic players, investors, And this means that there are banks usually who are paying or purchasing it, and there are insurance companies, and also there are investment funds. So it means that local households and companies have enough savings, and they need this. So that's why you have to channel in your domestic incomes, because practically through your financial sector, or also individually, but mostly through your financial sector, because they are aggregating all the individual investment or savings and investments, then they will do it. Because otherwise, yes, you can say that okay, but we can use foreign investors money as well. Let's have this other color. But the problem is that actually the availability of this money will completely depend on the external funding conditions, so external mm, risk bearing availability. So market sentiment, conjuncture, and so on. So if external shocks are happening because maybe there is a global financial crisis, obviously it will be really hard to finance your state if you are using huge share of foreign investors, because your economy was not growing enough, or you were not able to channel in domestic savings. So because maybe households are not resting in the banking system, or they're just poor, so it's an overgrowing state problem. So that's why it's really hard to. It's really important to balance everything out, because if it's not balanced out, then it can fall to pieces. But this will be next week. So today we were able to build this thing up, and now you can understand that how public finance should work. See you next week.